Hi everybody, this is Amy from Pocket Full of Time, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make my honey wheat bread. I'm making this video specifically for those of you who have had my bread and have requested a recipe and how to make this. I figured a video would be a little bit more helpful. I know when I was first learning how to make bread, videos were so much more helpful than just a recipe. So let's go ahead and get started. Very first thing I do, I take off all jewelry, which is my wedding band. When dealing with sticky dough, you generally don't want to have any jewelry on. It'll stick to your jewelry and then you'll walk around all day smelling like bread, which I guess isn't a bad thing because bread smells delicious. Okay, so the other thing I do, I get my tablespoon of yeast and my 8 teaspoons of vital wheat gluten out on the counter and sitting, because these were both in the fridge. I'll show you. This is the vital wheat gluten and this is the yeast that I use. Vital wheat gluten, not really important if you're only using white flour or bread flour, but if you're using any kind of whole wheat flour in your bread, this is really helpful. It will give more height to your bread, it will extend the shelf life of your bread, and it will also make the crumbs softer, which is excellent because whole wheat flour generally doesn't have a very soft crumb. So I use 8 teaspoons of this, and I just use this in bulk. And both of these require to be in the fridge, so before I start my bread, I make sure they're at room temperature first. So the very next thing I do, I get 2 cups of lukewarm water, and as you can see there's sugar at the bottom of here. I put about a tablespoon of sugar in here because yeast loves sugar. So if you're trying to give your yeast a boost, add sugar to it. It's pretty much a fail-proof way to ensure your yeast will grow. And the water, the temperature of the water is important. It's got to be warm to the touch, but not hot, so you can just have your finger in there and it won't sting you. So just lukewarm is just right. Because yeast is very, very sensitive to temperature, so just keep that in mind. Don't worry about getting all the big lumps out. Okay, so this is what our yeast looks like before it starts growing, and we're going to come back in about 10 minutes, and 10 minutes is usually around the time when it should be doubled bubbly and frothy, so we'll be back here in about 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and see what our yeast looks like. That's what we got. It's very bubbly and frothy at the top, and I wish I could try to tilt it. So you can see that there's just a nice layer of yeast that just risen to the top. It ate that sugar and it is developed wonderfully, and it's ready to go. Also, you can smell it. It smells just like bread. It smells really good, and so these are all really good signs that your yeast has been activated correctly and that it will do your bread good. So, but if you don't see this after 10 minutes, you probably should redo this proofing test. This is pretty much what it's called. It's a proofing test of your yeast. Go ahead and just start over with a new tablespoon of yeast, and it's probably just the yeast that you used. So go ahead and redo that. But if your yeast looks like this, then you are good to go. And what I have here is our dry ingredients in the same bowl that I put the vital wheat gluten in. Before I mixed it up, I just wanted to show you. I got 2 cups of bread flour, and over here 3 cups of white whole wheat flour. I could just use whole wheat flour, but I like the white whole wheat a little bit better. It's lighter in taste, and it's got a softer crumb, but it's the same thing as whole wheat. So And the beautiful thing about making your own bread, the really cool thing is that you can use any kind of flour. You can use rye flour, all bread flour, all whole wheat flour. Really, it's fun to experiment with, so my best suggestion, just use whatever kind of flour you really like, just as long as it's high quality. I use King Arthur's flour just because it's easy to find at the store. With flour, you definitely get what you pay for, so I highly suggest spending the few extra bucks on the good flour. Okay, so we got that, and I just whisk it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside, and now we'll work on our wet ingredients, which is what I like to call the flavor base. So we got this here. Get a nice big mixing bowl, which we'll be mixing our whole bread dough in. So the very first thing I start with is melted butter. And I've actually left this out on the counter to kind of get cool again, because once again we want to be gentle with our yeast. Nothing too hot, nothing too cold that will touch the yeast. And the next few things we'll add is our honey and our molasses. And as we all know, honey and molasses are very sticky, and they are quite a pain when you're trying to measure them. So get a tablespoon, because that's what we'll be measuring with, and spray it with Pam first, and it won't stick to your spoon. It's wonderful. It's a handy trick that I learned near the beginning of my bread making days. So we'll add 2 tablespoons of molasses. And look at that, it just slides right out. It is awesome. Whoever invented Pam was very wise. Okay, next up, we're going to add 5 tablespoons of honey. I used to add only 4 tablespoons, but then I noticed that it gets just a little bit sweeter if I add just a little bit more honey, and I really like that. I'm a sweet kind of person. But you don't have to add that last tablespoon. It's completely up to you. Get that mixed up well. Put that to the side. And then it's time to add our yeast, and it keeps growing. Can you tell it's pretty close to just kind of growing out of here, so let's go ahead and add that. If only you were in this kitchen right now, you could smell just the harmony of flavors and the smells. It smells so good. There's really only one con I can see to making your own bread, and that's time. From beginning to finish, it takes me about 5 hours to make 2 loaves of bread. So if you don't have 5 hours, this might not be the best for you, but in my opinion, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. I mean, fresh bread, it smells so good. You actually know what's inside your bread. And actually, bread is one of the highest sources of sodium. But if you make it from scratch, you can actually control how much salt you put in your bread, which is so handy. So now what we're going to do, we're going to start adding our dry ingredients to our wet. I just add 1 cup at a time. Now, to those of you who are just starting to make bread on your own for the very first time, I highly encourage you to not just watch this video, but to go out and look at other YouTube videos as well. I know that